Hello and welcome to a VC Circle podcast, a Know Your Startup edition, where we speak to startups and we also find out a bit about their business as well as the personal philosophy of the founders behind these companies. With me today is Vinayak Srivastav of AI video meta tagging platform Toch. Vinayak, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Narendra, for having me on the podcast.
If you can just sort of start by giving us a bit of a introduction to Toch, what it's about, the genesis, the product, the kind of users that you look at. I mean, if we could just start there.
Sure. So we started 4.5 years back when the idea fairly was simpler than what we're doing today. When we started the company, the idea was, can we identify objects inside video content and create an alternative e-commerce path for various companies? When we started that, the primary focus was to end consumers have more focused vision on the B2C side. When we started off, within 6 months, we understood that requires a much more, in terms of matrix and also in terms of capital that can be spent to acquire a lot of content in the early days. So we tweaked around, played a little bit around with the entire SaaS kind of a modeling, worked very closely with a few of the streaming platforms, broadcasters, to really understand the value proposition that could help the companies in the metadata area, which is the underlying technology. And that's how we started pivoting towards becoming more of a B2B oriented company and started working with various streaming platforms, with broadcasters, in giving a typical metadata solution. Now, breaking metadata into simple words is basically identifying data points inside video content. For us, it was very simple to identifying objects, characters, emotions, scenes, activities, location inside video content. And that led to multiple use cases at the front end, like automatic key moments, highlights, promos, powering your BI tools, dynamic ad insertions inside video content. And that's been our journey for the last 4.5 years.
So then, if I can sort of ask you, what exactly, as you look at it, in the next 3 to 4 years, what are your goals for the company? At least in terms of the core offering that you have, what are the goals for that?
Sure. So the main idea right now is to automate as much as manual processes that happen in the media company, so that we can kind of not only eliminate the entire manual intervention that happens, but also increase the turnaround times and also become cost optimizable, so that the companies, when they use us, they save a lot of money rather than spending that on capital for burning in resources perspective. And that's where we're headed. The vision of the company is to kind of ease out the media processes, help them monetize content better, because there are only limited ways how you can monetize it today. To increase those monetization routes is what our focus is on.
Can you give us an idea about how big the overall market for that is? I mean, what is the total addressable market here?
So the ad market in itself is a huge enough market. Everyone's well aware of it.
Right.
The insertion of ads inside video content has turned out to be a $6 billion market already. And the metadata itself, the data collection market, is a different pool altogether. Where we fit into it is in between the three verticals of collecting data from metadata on the video content, doing dynamic ad insertions inside video content, and then on top of that, simplifying your media processes. For us, our total addressable market is a $12 billion market, but our current market that we are after, with the kind of size of company we are addressing at least $1 billion in the next 2 years is what we are trying to chase in terms of the total market we are in.
So then when you and your co-founders were building out Toch, when you were sort of just starting out, as you mentioned, tweaking around with that SaaS-based model, what do you feel, or even right now, what do you feel has been the toughest hurdle for you to jump so far? Was it something related to getting your first check from an investor, or was it an operational thing? Could you elaborate a bit on that for us?
Sure. So the biggest challenge for any SaaS company is getting its first paid client, right?
Right.
It's as important as getting a first investor interested in your company. And I feel personally that it's even more critical, because your customers directly or indirectly tend to become also your investors eventually, rather by investing or by just referring you to other clients.
Mm-hmm.
So the first client definitely was the toughest to crack because media space in India is still developing. It's still going through an entire change. And because of that, the technology adoption in India is still, I would say, at a very early stage. There's still another 4 to 5 year cycle that it needs to go through before it starts adopting everything in each domain to
Mm-hmm.
kind of become a true tech-led first kind of a country. So yes, I would say that obviously the challenges were there initially with the product and trying to trying to match up to the expectation of the client. For us, it was even more challenging because we took the top-down approach rather than going a bottom-down approach where we started targeting the biggest of the clients in the country to kind of
Okay.
get their businesses first. So our internal motive was to try and get the top guys first. If they start using you, the word spreads out much faster, and then you'll get the
Mm-hmm.
low hanging fruits even in a much simpler and easier process. So for us, the idea was, can we crack them? And that took us a while because of various hierarchies set in the company. You're trying to, change the mindset,
Mm-hmm.
trying to break the barrier of, why technology first and why not do this manually kind of a thing. What kind of a cost differentiation it makes? Does it really justify on the ROIs? So a lot of things had to be done to be fixed. We worked around a lot in terms of products from the feedback we got from our customers. And I still remember when we first signed our client to the first client that we got, and then we kind of piggybacked on it.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, it's been a great journey for us. We haven't looked back after that. But obviously, the first client is always important.
Is costing, when it comes to the software as a service model, is costing also a factor that becomes a bit of a hurdle for companies, if I can use that word, because the model itself asks for you to be able to acquire and retain customers much faster than any other kind of company operating in any other sector. So I kind of wanted to understand the costing angle of it.
Yeah, definitely. It plays a very important part in your entire customer lifecycle journey because you're trying to defend your costing and why it is going to save that company in terms of adopting to your particular piece of technology, and B is also that yes, it can scale at an unprecedented pace because you don't have dependency on adding people at the back end. You
Mm-hmm.
can do this at scale and at a much faster pace. But also cost plays a very important part there because you're trying to justify to every department why we are eliminating 10 of your people that are doing this manually and replacing
Mm-hmm.
it with this particular system. Is it really making that much of an ROI difference for them, or is it just a tool that is there for the sake of it? So
Mm-hmm.
media companies at least see that in two step processes that yes, if it adds monetary value and saves them money at the same time. And also a big important factor there is can the efficiency and the turnaround time be turnaround time to be reduced and efficiency to be increased in that particular process.
So then keeping this, the costing, as well as what you mentioned about gaining your first client in mind, and also just the overall journey you've had, what has then been the easiest obstacle to cross?
The easiest was for us to kind of take the feedbacks from the client and start integrating it back into the product.
Mm-hmm.
When we first went out into the market with the basic product that we thought was ready for the industry,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of overplayed, I would say, because we thought that it was ready, but obviously it needed a lot more tweaks, which was a much easier process rather than going through the entire sales process. Because there you just need a feedback to what needs to be added, and then you can just go behind and get your modules trained and the machines ready for it, and then you can immediately come back to the client saying that this is ready here, you can test it.
Feedback is an interesting point that you mentioned, because a lot of times what happens is a company goes to the market, they have their product, they get feedback on it, but a lot of times the feedback that they receive is in direct conflict with the ideology they have for the product. Was that not an issue for you and your team?
It was. So we are talking to multiple clients in the early days, right? Now you
Right.
can't integrate everything into your particular product.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have some differentiation. You're going to lack something which can probably fit into your product roadmap, or it could be an added feature in the near future. You need to prioritize very well what really is important to get that account for you, and what is
Mm-hmm.
that basic thing that they will need to just start billing you. Once you have those things sorted, and once you know exactly what's going to get you the basic, or I would say even the bare minimum revenue out of that particular client, that's exactly what you should be looking for starting in the early days. You don't have a large team, you don't have too much capital to play around with. You're still in the early revenue days. You're still kind of in the product build versus survival mode. So in that kind of an instance, you have to figure out exactly what it is that will just get me that revenue. And when I say revenue, you don't have to go after the entire chunk. You just get 1% of it, and that's good to go. Because once you start getting integrated there, and once people start using you, you can keep building over a period of time. But it gets difficult if they're never going to use you. Then you're losing them as a potential client. So it becomes very important to just figure out that thin line where you need to say, okay, here, this is my basic product that I have, and this I think you can use, and you can pay me for it as you use. That's what I would say a right way to always look at your SaaS businesses particularly.
So the larger going beyond the segment that Touch caters to, the larger software as a service and artificial intelligence based startup community is huge. I mean, whether you're looking at it from a logistics point of view, an advertising point of view, or any other kind of sector. What do you think, at least keeping the segment that you cater to, what do you think has been the best sort of operational or management kind of advice that you've received, whether it's been from a peer of yours in the space or an investor? We're definitely interested in hearing about that.
Sure. The early days, I remember talking to a lot of guys. One of the key resources that we had in the company also was an ex media guy, and there were multiple guys that I looked up to in the industry. Tried converting senior guys as mentors and took feedbacks. One of the key responses I used to always hear from a couple of key people that I thought were important for me was build the product at a blitz pace. You are not going to get time to kind of, wait for the market to develop. Build the product, keep it ready, even if you know that the market is not yet ready to adopt it. Pitch it in advance so when the time comes for them to utilize it, they know exactly where to look back. And that is the time frame where you look to develop that particular piece of product into a much more robust kind of an environment, so that when they do come to you, that room of error is eliminated. It's at bare minimum. So that's a brilliant piece of advice I got, that keep innovating at a pace where you know that there is a need for that particular piece of technology, and at the same time, don't get lost into the product all the time. You need to validate each of the features or each of the offerings that you have inside the product with clients. If they are not going to use it, and if there is no requirement for it, building it is not going to really help, because then you're just building a particular piece of tech and you're just going to sideline it. If there's not going to be any users, you're not going to make money on it. So you can only generate revenue if you know that there is going to be a potential customer, even if not today, in near future.
So a bit of a combination between a trial and error kind of product development and brutal honesty when it comes to the feedback and criticism you receive for what you've developed.
Absolutely.
So then, do you feel, based on that and just based on the rest of the conversation we've had so far, is there a pet peeve that you have about the industry that you work in, or even the startup ecosystem in general?
So it depends, right?
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I would say I have been lucky to have such kind of guys around me that were brutal honest to me, no matter how tough the days were. They just were brutal honest about what we're building, and how it is going to be used and what's going to be around it. What is it that is required to kind of scale the company. And that brutal honest feedback really helped a lot. But sometimes I've heard a lot of people also kind of go down a different tangent. A lot of people have a different set of expectations and opinions about everything, and that sometimes tends to kind of with early stages of founders, definitely kind of misleads it, I would say, sometimes when they don't get the right type of advice, because then they get lost in terms of what exactly is it that they should focus on.
Hmm. Too much noise instead of signals then.
Absolutely.
So then, how do you sort of maintain your idealism? How do you the idealism that you have not only for touch and the product that comes with it, but also about your vision in general for the industry that you're serving? How do you maintain that idealism, and what do you hope from the future in that context?
Sure. So media industry is going through an entire digital adoption stage right now. We were going to
Right.
see India as an entire country adopting to the digital assets around Q1 of 2021. We have seen an acceleration because of the current scenarios where a lot of people have now turned on to digital mediums for their entertainment and content consumption.
Mm-hmm.
And media is just going to evolve from here in terms of how it is consumed. There's going to be definitely a lot of new innovations that are going to come around in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Where we fit into this entire structure and where our vision is in the next few years also is that keep innovating on the products, grow our market scale. We have a decent amount of customer base in India, and we have a decent amount of customer base outside India as well now. And what we've realized is that we need to scale faster because the market is not going to wait for you. So the idea is in the next 12 months to 18 months, scale
Mm-hmm.
into 2 more different continents, have another pipeline of 100 to 150 different clients that will start working with us. That will kind of, pass a lot of content and we become the central hub for metadata eventually. So that's a vision that we have currently where we're able to kind of process content on the fly with multiple continent servers.
I mean, and finally, I understand it may be a bit redundant since you're probably at home owing to the lockdown that we're all in the middle of. But what is your work-life balance philosophy? Do you have a particular perspective that you view it at, or is it something that that you've developed as Touch itself has developed?
Yes, definitely. A lot of things have changed in terms of how the work culture was internally, at least for us inside the company. We did intend to kind of, have a hard stop, and especially when you're a tech company, it does get a lot for your core guys, right? I know for all the engineers that are sitting and coding for us, or in, training in different modules. And obviously, this change has given us a lot of flexibility, but it also kind of disturbs a few things where that boundary needs to be drawn, especially with people internally in the company, because not everyone's going to understand that it still is a normal work routine that needs to follow. So things are a little different when how it was pre-COVID and how it is now. That we do intend to kind of overstretch ourselves, which does result out in seeing people get tired sometimes because of the long working hours or probably having a long week as well. We're now trying to kind of balance that by compensating, saying that look, we're going to have like an open policy where if you wish to kind of take a day off, no matter what it is, even though you have your fixed Saturday, Sundays, just drop in an email and take it. We had a unique policy before the COVID also where we had a no leave policy inside the company where you could work from anywhere up to 90 days and no questions asked. And also your basic leaves that were there as the part of the HR policy. But during this, what we've realized is because people are at home, it's going to get a little bit more difficult for everyone to balance it out properly. So we're now kind of opening up saying that, if you wish to kind of take a leave, just take, because we understand that at times managing a house and then, managing your work at the same time gets a little difficult.
Vinayak, it's been absolutely great talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us today.
Thank you so much, Narendra, for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.